Jim's Otter, can you let us know who you are?
No, it's Jim's Otter.
No, is that?
No, I'm here.
Jim's. I'm just gonna say, like, that's a whole thing we're gonna have to deal with at some point, right? We're in a new world.
Get it straightened out somehow.
Okay. There we go. What would be crazy is if it talked back. It's like, I am God. Yeah. Okay. Let me get started. There we go. Good morning to all of those in person, those that are virtual, and our AI friends. Welcome to the. I've watched The Matrix, so I know how this goes. Okay. Welcome to the Maricopa Regional Continuum of Care Committee meeting. For those around the table, please turn on your microphone when speaking. For those participating via Zoom, please state your name when making a comment or asking a question and mute when you are not speaking. The MAG public comment process allows members of the public to comment on items on today's agenda or on items that fall under MAG's jurisdiction. If you would like to comment at today's meeting, please fill out a white request to speak card located on the information table and give it to MAG staff. If you're in the audience today, we do have people in the audience. Hello. Please remember to sign in at the information table. If you parked in the garage, unless you just want to pay for it, parking validators are available on the information table. If you purchase a transit ticket to come to the meeting, please see staff for a ticket. Hearing assisted devices are available for MAG staff. We will now ask Haley to proceed with a roll call. Please indicate you are here and your organization after Haley calls your name.
Thank you. Michelle Alberti.
Present for New Leaf.
Dawn Bogart. Vanessa Carthel.
Present.
An organization, please.
ABC.
Thank you. Allison Cook Davis. Erin Cowan Haig. Stephanie Crum.
Stephanie Crum, present. Solari, HMIS.
Can we turn her up?
Jessica Cruz. Nicole Gibson.
Nicole Gibson, UMOM, present.
Anne Marie Johnston. Christina Lopez.
Christina Lopez, Native American Connections, present.
Marcy McFarland.
Marcy McFarland, present. Home Inc.
Jim McPherson.
Jim McPherson, Phoenix Community Alliance here.
Reina Padilla Guzman.
Present, Chicanos por la Causa.
Jennifer Page.
Good morning, Jennifer Page, Mercy Care.
Aaron Rain.
Aaron Rain, City of Mesa, present.
Patricia Scott Lopez. Sarah Sims.
Present, Phoenix Elementary School District number 1.
Laura Scott Nicky.
Laura Scott Nicky, the Salvation Army. Good morning.
Michelle Stokes.
Good morning, Michelle Stokes, Behold Charities, present.
Christopher Wallace. Emily Walsh.
Present with Maricopa County.
Co-chair Nathan Smith.
Present, Phoenix Rescue Mission.
And co-chair Richard Cruz.
Present, Human Services Campus. The next item on the agenda is a call to the audience. This is the opportunity for the public to comment on items that fall under the Continuum of Care Committee that are not on the agenda or that are on the agenda for discussion and not for action. 15 minutes will be provided for the call to the audience agenda item unless the committee requests an exception to this limit. MAG staff, were there any comments received or anyone who has joined the call to offer comments?
No comments were received.
Thank you. We'll now move on to the next agenda item. Okay. The consent agendas will approve multiple items at the same time. Committee members can always ask for an agenda item to be pulled off the consent agenda to be heard during the meeting, at which time staff can provide additional information, give a presentation, and answer any questions. Does any member of the committee have any questions or comments on the consent agenda? Hearing none, could I have a motion to approve the consent agenda? Thank you, Jim. And need a second.
I can second.
Thank you, Emily. So it's been properly moved by Jim McPherson and seconded by Emily Walsh. Is there any discussion on the motion? Hearing none. For committee members in the room, we will do a voice vote. Those in favor, please say yay.
Yay.
Those opposed, please say nay. Hearing none. For members joining remotely, I will ask Haley to proceed with a roll call vote. Please indicate clearly how you vote, stating yay or nay after your name is called.
Thank you. And as a reminder for in the room votes, just make sure you turn on your microphone for yeas and nays. Thank you. Michelle Alberti,
Yay.
Stephanie Crum,
Yay.
Nicole Gibson,
Yay.
Marcy McFarland,
Yay.
sorry, Christina Lopez,
Yay.
Reina Padilla Guzman,
Yay.
Aaron Rain,
Yay.
Jen Page,
Yay.
Sarah Sims,
Yay.
Laura Scott Nikki,
Yay.
Michelle Stokes,
Yay.
and did I miss anyone? Great.
Yes, Dawn Bogart.
Oh, thank you, Don.
You bet.
Back to you, cheers.
Okay. Thank you. We'll move on to the next agenda item. Co-chair.
Thank you. So Kelly Donnelly Williams, Director of Human Services Division, will now share information about the ongoing evaluation of the coordinated entry system, including an overview of the report recently completed by Home Base. Ms. Williams will also discuss the creation of a stakeholder work group to further analyze the VI SPDAT assessment tool during the next quarter with Home Base's technical assistance. Kelly.
Good morning, co-chairs and members of the committee. Thank you for having me here this morning. MAG entered into a contract with Home Base to do a coordinated entry assessment of our community, looking at a variety of different variables. The report was distributed to members of the Lived Experience Committee, the Coordinated Entry Committee, Race Equity, and others in the last month. And it has brought up some further discussions that need to happen regarding the VI SPDAT tool, which we use in our community as an assessment. Per the suggestions of the leadership of the Coordinated Entry Committee, Home Base will lead a series of 6 conversations between now and the end of June regarding the VI SPDAT tool. Those 6 sessions are specifically related to orientation of the redesign, implementation for CES, prioritization values, assessment questions, evaluation metrics, a pilot process if there is a change to be made, and an interim prioritization process. We were looking to Home Base to help lead these conversations because we think it will be helpful, since they did the assessment, to be able to provide guidance to the conversation. But we also want to be very clear that this is not a conversation MAG staff are trying to make decisions in. Instead, we are looking to a stakeholder work group to really lead that conversation. After and during each of those 6 meetings, there will be a specific question that the stakeholder work group will be asked to consider and answer to move the next conversation forward. Ideally, at the end of these 6 conversations, we will have a draft report of some sort to make suggestions on how we either replace the VI SPDAT or improve the VI SPDAT to make it more equitable for individuals coming into the homeless system across our continuum. We did carefully select individuals, again, with input from others, both in the coordinated entry leadership positions and others in leadership positions across our continuum of care, to make the selection of those work group members. As you can imagine, we had a lot of interest and participation for the work group, but to keep it productive, we wanted to make sure that it was a manageable size. We also wanted to provide the opportunity for individuals who were not selected to participate in the work group to be able to listen in. So each of the 6 meetings will be open. The chat will be open for questions. The way we plan to staff these conversations, again, to keep it productive, is the work group members will be allowed to speak, obviously, during the meeting and be able to contribute. Anybody who was not formally invited to be a member of the work group and is participating in the audience will be able to leave questions in the chat. MAG staff will then process all of those questions after the fact, get answers back, and we will send the answers to any of those questions as we have the information available to anybody who has registered for the workshops. We're trying to keep the conversation going. Again, by the end of the 6th meeting, when we have some sort of draft report on what we should do with the VI SPDAT, whether it's keeping it and tinkering with it or removing it entirely and creating something else, whatever that looks like after the next 3 months of conversation, we will again offer an opportunity for individuals who did not participate in the immediate work group to provide further feedback. So it will be a continued conversation among the continuum of care. I did want to quickly go through the representation that is included on the work group. We have representation in both leadership and frontline staff from UMOM and HSC because they are coordinated entry leads. We have coordinated entry committee leadership, lived experience committee representative, a race equity committee representative, a representative from the board, the City of Phoenix because they are the funder for the coordinated entry assessment process, access specifically related to the waiver. We're trying to make sure that access housing staff is included in these conversations from a systemic perspective. And then we have population-specific representatives, including seniors, youth, domestic violence, veterans, and individuals with serious mental illness. With that, co-chairs and members of the committee, I am concluding my presentation and welcome any questions that you may have. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Kelly. Are there any questions or comments from the committee? I have a question. So it's really just to clarify the process of at the end of the 6 sessions that are scheduled, I think the first of which is today, right?
That is correct.
There will be a plan to do something with our coordinated entry tool. There won't be a tool yet. It will be either we are keeping the BI SPDAT, modifying it, we're getting rid of it, doing something different, but we'll know that we want what we want to do by that point. Is that right?
In theory, yes.
That's the ideal.
That is the idea, yes.
Yeah. And then from there, any idea of what happens to it? Let's say we decide to go wholesale new tool, right? I know that's at least a possibility. What happens from there?
Ideally, the plan will also include a timeline with next steps. At that time, we will not be further contracting with home base, but MAG staff and the continuum of care will look forward to the next steps on implementation on whatever those steps might be.
Sweet, thank you.
You're welcome.
Vanessa, ABC. A simple question. Those sessions which an audience member can just observe, will those be posted on the MAG website?
We are not recording them.
Okay.
However, we will be happy to include any questions or information that come out of them and distribute them as requested.
Okay.
They are on the event calendar already on our website, and they were sent out to the board, coordinated entry, lived experience, race equity, and anybody who registered for the first conversation on the 30th. So if you're looking for the invite to that, reach out to any staff. We can get it to you.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Thank you. We'll now move on to the next agenda item. One of the Continuum of Care's functions is to standardize processes and increase coordination in efforts to end homelessness. As part of this, the COC provides education and training to homeless service providers, local jurisdictions, and other stakeholders. Dylan Belmont, Human Services Planner with MAG, will provide a detailed presentation and timeline of the learning management system, a proposed solution to standardization of trainings. Dylan?
Thank you so much, Co-Chair. I do have a presentation. I'll share my screen real quick. Great. Okay, so thank you so much for that introduction. I think you really set the stage well. Want to share some information on, I don't know, maybe I'm biased, but I think it's a huge next step for the COC. The learning management system, something you might have heard about. Basically, it's going to be a platform that brings together all of these different training opportunities in one location, ready to go. So by way of brief introduction, as you stated, something that the COC can uniquely provide as sort of a platform for different service providers to come together is just the opportunity to share those best practices and provide training, right, in order to increase system effectiveness. So that sort of leaves us with the question of how can we improve that? How can we make training more consistent? How can we make it more engaging? And ultimately, like, how can it be more impactful and informative? Well, this is the proposal. Wow. Okay, so the Learning Gateway, what is it? Those three words are probably what sum it up, right? Centralized training repository. This is a single place that anyone in the community can go to and find past recordings of webinars or interactive courses, even just like resource sheets. Everything that's on there, it provides a lot of flexibility on how content is being delivered. So you can have courses that include interactive questions where, let's say, a learner is providing a short answer response to something that's prompted, and then peers can come in that are also taking that course and say, wow, that's actually a really great idea. I didn't think about that. It increases coordination between those that are learning and also would expand the system as a whole. Also, it creates the opportunity for better organizing all of this information. Obviously, there is a lot of complex material in this field that isn't always able to be disseminated over an hour, right? So if it is broken down into multiple different courses, then you know where to go. From the back end, from our side, it is super helpful that this tool will offer a lot more in terms of reporting and analytics. We'll be able to see which courses people really want to engage with, where there are shortcomings, perhaps, if assessments are included and there are consistent issues with gaps in knowledge. That indicates where there might be opportunity for more training or further refinement. And also, just something really cool is that as these courses get completed, individuals will be able to take certificates from those courses with them throughout the region or further through their career. So just a little bit about the timeline. The LMS has sort of been in discussion for a long time, but in this most recent iteration, we started talks late last year with either partners in the community that have existing systems or even some of the other COCs that are using it, just to figure out more of the details on what makes this successful. What are the features required of an LMS that would really make it shine, and what are things to look out for. So this informed our process for narrowing down the options for vendors. Ultimately, we ended up going with an organization known as WorkRamp, which is providing sort of the framework and technological aspect for this, which led to a contract being approved by the MAG Regional Council last month. So now we're in a phase of really getting it all built out, starting to make sure enough content is in there so when it does roll out to the community, it's exciting and impactful from day one. And this month also, towards the end of the month, we'll start a sort of limited user testing experience to get the first hands on it, to see if there are any necessary changes before rolling it out to the larger community. And then it's going to take a segmented launch from there, gradually increasing it to more people as time goes on. But I really do want to emphasize that, this is expected to be something that remains an asset to the community for a long time. So it's not just throwing it out there. There needs to be a lot of content developed over time, and also making sure that it's responsive to what's impactful to the community, right? Like if a feature is in there that does nothing, taking it out, or vice versa. I would just suggest keeping an eye on the COC newsletter for any updates. Everything will be in there, including information on access, and always available for questions too. Great, good stuff. Okay, so speaking of trainings, there are so many things that need to be covered, right? So many things that people deal with day to day, and there are going to be so many different users accessing the system that it covers different aspects of the work, right? So you're talking about best practices, you're talking about skill development, niche topics related to subpopulations, HUD regulations, really everything, right? And so many more than what's listed there. Those are some examples, but ultimately, it needs to be responsive to what the community is looking for. So, for example, the CE evaluation that just occurred, one of the gaps that was discovered from that was that there are needs for like more information on coordinated entry, right? Or understanding data. So definitely a lot to go over. There's a preliminary list of like 100 topics to get to at some point. So over time, they'll be knocked out. But I guess that does sound like a huge overpromise. How could all of this even take place, right? Where would all of these trainings come from? The short, easy answer is everywhere. That's kind of how it works now, right? Like MAG staff will be producing some of this content internally. We'll be working with community partners such as yourselves to get some of this stuff nailed down. Other COCs like Tucson has content that they're willing to share, and even other national resources that already have this out there, just helping consolidate it into one location. And I guess lastly, this slide, I want to take a moment to emphasize that, this is an addition. It's an asset. It's not going to be something ideally that will affect anything that currently is working. And part of that is in-person trainings, right? There's a lot of value that's brought to the in-person trainings that MAG hosts here in the office, having that face-to-face connection. So yeah, I just like this system should heighten those experiences and just provide a new level of accessibility for maybe those who aren't able to attend in person or have busier schedules to be able to have it more flexible. In fact, it does help a little further with planning even because, those live sessions could be automatically recorded and put into the LMS, or even something as simple as registration instead of dealing with Zoom links and trying to find links. It's going to be located in a standardized event calendar on the homepage where users can register with a single click of a button. So yeah, very exciting. I hope you're all excited.
Jazzed, sir.
Okay, thank you for the reassurance. Yeah, truthfully, a project like this, I just want to take a moment to thank all of you who have led trainings in the past, participated in them, because truly this is what, makes the COC effective, right? Is coming together, sharing these ideas and thoughts in order to build everyone up. So really look forward to how this comes out, and please stay tuned for next month when we start getting some hands-on experience. And with that, contact information is on the screen. Feel free to reach out anytime, and I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Dylan. So are there any questions from the committee?
This is Jennifer. I had a couple of questions. I don't know if it's too early, but will there be any limitations to the number of users that have access to the LMS?
Yeah, thank you, Jennifer. That's a great question. Currently, there is a limit of 2,000. It just depends on, the contract, right? So this is how access will sort of like play a factor into that. We don't want it to be something where any users are, there's like a barrier to access. We want to make it as open as possible, but it'll really just come down to sort of who is needing it the most and who's going to be actively using it. But I'll be sharing more information on the specific, I don't know if that was a satisfying answer or not, but I'll be sharing more information on the specifics at next month's committee meeting.
Okay, no, that's helpful. And then my other question is also probably too early to ask, but I'll ask it anyways. Has there been any discussion around the development of like a curriculum or like community-based standards as far as, if I'm calling myself an outreach worker, at a minimum, I've, participated and completed these trainings. And so there's some consistency across, providers that we've agreed upon, as a continuum of care. Was there any discussion around that kind of approach?
Yeah, it would be, I think that is sort of an ideal place to get to. It sort of will just come down to when content has developed enough to the point where it would be reasonable to have that standardization. I think a very realistic short-term goal, at least at the time of launch, is that all of the content will be sort of organized and tagged by those areas, right? So if an outreach worker logs on, they can find all of the content that is directly relevant to their position, while not being, locked out of the other content if they want to see it, but at least having that ease of use. But just, I guess to further answer your question, if we get to a point as a community where people are comfortable seeing this content and wanting to sort of assign it out, I don't think that's out of the equation.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, this is Laura. Quick question, and maybe I missed this and I apologize if I did. Is there going to be a cost to users?
Not at this time, no.
Wonderful. Thank you.
If I can add to, I think to Jen and Laura's question, I think that's where we're, and Dylan will share more in May about what it means to be a COC partner and be able to get into the learning management system. But that's where there is kind of this like balance of cost and also access. And so we want to make sure it isn't a barrier for folks to get access, but also we are not all rolling in millions of dollars to be able to pay for a learning management system that's openly available for everyone. The other element that is really cool about Workgroup, and part of the reason we move forward with them, is there is an ability to have trainings not behind the learning management system wall. So things that are more open, if folks needed just like one training that was in the learning management system, there is an ability to make some of those more open or not.
Vanessa with ABC. I'm sure MAG staff has already thought about this, but just want to say it out loud is in content that it could be one perceived as like a certification. For example, I saw HQS up there, and we know that that is a certificate that you receive, and I wouldn't want to have kind of a summarized or a bridge kind of like version of HQS, and then people assume that they are able to be in like an HQS inspector. So just those type of considerations, which I'm sure you all have already thought about, I just would want to put out there, and kind of along the lines of what Jen was saying is, especially like, you know, some of those specialized skills should really be made apparent that there are certification programs and licensees that cannot be gained through this unless we offer that, and that would be wonderful. Thank you.
Yeah, definitely appreciate the comment. It's really important to distinguish what is information or a resource versus something like that. So it'll definitely be important to make that note.
I think, Vanessa, to that point too, working with Tucson and Balance of State, like Tucson has an entire HQS inspection certification in it. So distinguishing that versus like an overview of what an HQS inspection is. And so Dylan, can you talk a little bit about how we have a list of 180 trainings plus that are interests from folks, but talking a little bit about how prioritizing and making sure that trainings are actually what folks are wanting and the completeness of what folks are looking for.
Yeah, for sure. So, you know, there are certain elements that are required to be trainings designated by HUD or the NOFO process that are obviously a immediate priority to get up and available, right? But it also comes down to what is quick to get up there based on what's already available from the other COCs or other resources. So as like wonderful as it would be to just have everything available immediately, there is obviously a lot to go through. So it will be a process getting everything out there. But, you know, refining it over time and continuing to receive community input and feedback, I think will really drive this project forward and make sure it is still receptive to Maricopa's needs.
And will this system be coordinated through the MAG website and linked to and?
Yeah, so it is sort of like its own web ecosystem, which will be like linked on the MAG website and maybe LinkedIn agendas or something where it's very easy to get to and it's always at your fingertips. Definitely want to make sure that it's never a burden to get there or to find it or to log on.
One other question. So if we have ideas out there or sessions that we know of, you coordinate through you?
Yep, please feel free. There will be, once you have access in the LMS, there will be easier methods to do that. But yeah, by all means, please feel free to send me emails and that'd be great.
I have a kind of a technical question. I'll give you a quick bit of context. So like kind of to Jen's question, what I would love to do is to, at least at the organizational level, assign to staff, here are the trainings that you have to take at your level. So as an intake or as a navigator, outreach navigator or whatever. And so if there aren't any suggestions yet that come down the road from this project, great, I can still do that internally. I use a different system as an LMS. We use Relias, as many people who are behavioral health providers do. So I'm wondering if there's like a connection between, if there will be data connection automatically between these two, or if I will just have to go into Reliance, which isn't the worst thing in the world, by the way, but like create names of trainings and then track people that way. Because I need, at the end of the day, want to keep track of have people taken the prescribed trainings. And it seems like I'll probably have to do that in my own system. But will there be a direct connection, or will I just have to recreate them?
I'm so glad you asked that question.
I love the things you get excited about too, by the way, or kindred spirits.
So yeah, I guess a few things come to mind. First, okay, so like your organization, if you, like from the back end, we could assign you as a role that is able to specifically assign courses for those in your organization. So it would be very easy for you to say like, okay, this employee, like you need to take that training, right? And also we are coordinating with systems that use Reliance now, specifically Access, to figure out how to coordinate certificates basically, and make sure those stay consistent. Like Access is having trainings on 1115 waivers and whatnot, and we want to make sure that if we have that content in our system for those who aren't in Reliance, that there's like coordination between the two, right? So whether or not it is direct, we'll at least have a framework for you to go off of. Yeah, did that hit all the points?
Yes, that helps a lot.
The other thing that both we're trying to figure out how you can export and get credit in both if it's the exact same training and having the exact same training in both. So not everybody has access to Elias, not everybody has access to LMS, but kind of an either or. So we're in conversations both with Access, and then I will say also if you are a statewide organization, Balance Estate and PIMA are in a different platform than WorkGrant. So if as we get trainings across the entire state, can you also get credit if you have presence in Tucson or somewhere else?
Are there any other questions? Dylan, thank you. We're going to move on to the next agenda item. Haley Owens, Human Services Planner at MAG, will share an update to the new system flow dashboard process. This will include a video by Cleo Warner, Human Services Planner at MAG, that shows how to access and read the system flow dashboard. Haley, please take it away.
Thank you so much. So as you guys may or may not have noticed, we did not go over the system flow dashboard this month. And that was a decision that we, with the chairs made, just in order to streamline our meetings, but also to make sure that you guys have access to this information whenever you want to access it. So you don't have to wait till this meeting to do that. So as I did this month, I will always include a, like an export of the system flow dashboard to go on the consent agenda. So you guys will see that. But like I said, you guys are going to be able to access that whenever you want on your own. And Tyler, if we could get the video queued up. And I want to say, I feel like this is a perfect segue. This is something that will live in our LMS. And so I feel like this will be a good foray, number one, to like have this information, but also to see what that is going to look like ideally in the future for our new learning management system. So yeah, so here's a video.
This is the how-to video for the system flow dashboard, and we'll walk you through how to read and interpret the three main tabs of the dashboard. Before we begin, a couple items to note. When looking at the dashboard, it's important to remember that the data displayed here reflects only those projects that are in the COC and inputting data into HMIS or the Homelessness Management Information System. Any project not using HMIS will not be in this data. Please also note that this dashboard can display long-term trends or patterns and can be used to help the COC monitor items like data quality or health of our data tracking system, but that it's not intended to draw generalized conclusions about the system on a month-to-month basis. For more information on data takeaways and trends, you can refer to the Homelessness Trends Report on the data page of the MAG website under Homelessness. The System Flow Dashboard is a platform that shows month-by-month updates of the Maricopa Regional COC data. Solari Crisis and Human Services, our HMIS administrator, is responsible for maintaining and updating the System Flow dashboard. The dashboard consists of 5 tabs in total, though 3 of them hold most of the information you'll need. This tab, the Information tab, serves as the landing page for the dashboard. This graphic offers a visual of the groups that the dashboard is tracking, who are coming in and moving out of the homelessness system. Scrolling down, you'll see a list of definitions that will help you interpret the information provided on each of the tabs. When you're not sure what you're looking at on the other tabs, chances are the answer is in this list of definitions. So moving over to the Active Overview tab. This tab displays the overall trend lines of the total active households in the homelessness system. This means that these graphs are tracking everyone who is currently touching the homelessness system. Both graphs display data over time, starting in January of 2018. The first graph displays trend lines for the total number of active households in our system, and has 2 subsequent lines that show this total broken out into singles and families. Note that dragging your mouse over the components of the graph will provide you with additional information or context for these numbers, and if you hover your mouse over the trend line, dots will appear for each recorded month and display the month, subpopulation type, household count, and the total person count. It is important to check these numbers for added information, especially for lines such as the families trend line, which might not visually appear to change as much as singles, but could still be displaying some pretty significant changes. The next graph on this tab displays the same data as the first, but broken into 7 subpopulations. More context for these subpopulations can be found below the graph in this definitions section. As with the first graph, you can hover your mouse over the lines to get more data about any given reporting month for that population. So next we'll move to the Flow Details tab. This tab displays 4 trend lines that add detail to how many and what type of households are entering and leaving the system at any given month. Like the Active Overview, this tab displays data from 2018 up to the present reporting month. The first graph is the Actively Homeless graph, which shows a trend line displaying the number of active heads of household each month. Next is the Total Inflow, Total Outflow graph, which overlays inflow numbers with outflow numbers. This is done to create a display that shows the number of heads of households that are coming into the system and those who are leaving. You can hover your mouse over these arrow icons over here to also get the definitions for total outflow and total inflow. Below this is the inflow detail, which shows further detail of the households entering the system. This displays inflow of new clients, those who return from housing, and those who have returned from inactive. As you can see, those definitions are provided here as well. And when you hover over the trend lines, you get additional data and see the numbers in context with all active households, total inflow, and total outflow. Last on the page is the outflow detail, which breaks down the households leaving the system. The graph shows 2 trend lines, one of the total number of households, and then one for those whose exits were recorded in HMIS as unknown or negative. If you look to the left of the screen, you can click on this gear icon, which will provide you with a filter and setting options to change the population, date range, and visual type that can be displayed. So for example, we can look at chronic for the last reporting year, let's say, and say I want actively homeless in a table. I want inflow and outflow in both a graph and a table, and then keep the others the same. And it changes the visuals for you and provides a different type of interactive display. And then to go back and reset, you can just put it how it was before. So then the remaining two tabs are generally used for back-end or internal data analysis. The BFC Reliability tab, which stands for Built for Zero Reliability, is where the Maricopa Regional COC tracks data reliability according to the National Built for Zero methodology standards. Then the Engine tab displays tables that summarize all of the dashboard data by population. And you can see there's another gear here to adjust settings. So thank you for watching this walkthrough of the System Flow dashboard. Please reach out to Mag or Solari with any additional questions you may have about this data platform.
So just want to give a big shout out to Cleo for putting that together, and also wanted to let everybody know she is available for your voiceover.
Yeah.
Happy to take any questions on the new process if there are any. You guys should all have access already to the dashboard, but if you don't have the link for some reason, just shoot me an email and I can get that to you. So happy to take any questions if there are any.
Are there any questions from the committee? Okay, so we'll move on to the next agenda item. Cleo, wonderful work. Be proud of it.
Oh, I think Cleo has a quick question.
Oh, yes.
Really quickly.
Please.
The idea is that you like watch that once and never have to watch it again so that you can go through the dashboard yourself. But if that wasn't clear, or like you watch that and you're like, I still don't know how to go through it, I would love that feedback so that we can do a re-record, and like hopefully there are other iterations of this that will show up on the LMS and not just that first draft version. So if you have any comments, please let me know.
Thank you. I will just say this, having used that quite a bit, that seems really straightforward and helpful. It just points to all the things, all the places that we tend to have questions about. You like answered it right there. And then the gears thing, not something that I bet you people who just use it here and there wouldn't know to go there and to use that. So I actually find that really helpful. So thank you. All right, so I'm going to move on to the next agenda item. So decreasing returns to homelessness was identified as part of the Maricopa Regional Continuum of Care's system performance measures. In order to accomplish this goal, Haley Owens will discuss the current work being done in this work group and how to better focus efforts to increase connections to other systems of care. Haley.
Thank you so much. So first of all, I just want to say thank you to everybody who has participated in the Connecting to Other Systems of Care work group so far. I really appreciate your attendance and just continued contributions. Literally couldn't do it without you. So I feel like the feedback that I've gotten is we have a big ship with not really any direction. And I think maybe we just we bit off a little more than we could chew. So after speaking with the co-chairs, we thought it would be maybe a better approach to discuss taking these in smaller increments. So instead of just saying like connecting to other systems of care, it's like maybe we identify the first system of care we want to work on, and then maybe for 3 months really work on that, find a good process, and then move on to the next system of care. So what I was hoping to open up with this conversation is sort of really get a firm decision on what we would like to work on first, and how we want to approach that. I know our attendance has been a little different each month, so if there's a time that works better, I'm definitely open to changing the time. And the only caveat I have is I would recommend that we pick a system that we can work on for 3 work groups. We don't want to extend it too far beyond that, because I think then we're just getting too far into the weeds. So I would encourage everybody to just take a minute to sort of think about what is realistically could be accomplished in 3 work groups. And then would love to open the floor to discussion on what you guys would like to tackle.
Thank you, Haley. So the committee will now discuss what we'd like to do with the future of this work group. and what we'd like to specifically focus on to accomplish as a goal. So I haven't attended the work group. I know Vanessa, you and other people have been in attendance, and it, after talking with Haley, seems like, hey, let's completely pivot it, as to her point. I feel strongly that a couple of reasons why this is something we should focus on is, one, I already identified in the board strategic plan for us. That's huge. So we can fit ourselves into the greater system and be a part of the thing that we're all trying to do collectively. I love that. So then from there, it's what does it look like for us to go and find out information from these other people? I would think we establish something like a research question, and then use that research question to guide the work that we do. It means that we can break it into other questions. So then, in other words, operationalizing it, we're sitting down in front of, say, people working in the hospital system. And we have a list of stakeholders within, say, the hospital system, if that's the system we decide to go for. It could be stakeholder types like doctors, nurses, EMTs, things like that. And then specific stakeholders, people who we actually know, and we have a target list. And we go and talk to these people and we ask them a series of questions that all coincide with the big research question, which has something to do with where are there disconnections for people experiencing homelessness in this system that people fall into the cracks. So if that's the concept, what is the overarching research question that guides the work? Who are the stakeholder groups that we need to go talk to? Who are the specific stakeholders within those groups? And then let's go do it. I think the one big detail I always keep forgetting, I think I've asked this a bunch of times, is what is the date of our deliverable? Like what are we expected to deliver something back to the board by a certain date?
So this was identified in last year's board strategic plan, and we started working on it. And so ideally it would be completed by the next board strategic plan next year.
I think you all just need to identify a date where you think it can get accomplished. And I would very much encourage you to break it down into smaller chunks of, like, the hospital example that you just used. Is that deliverable in August? And then it can be that broken down of this very large overarching bubble broken down into smaller chunks.
Gotcha.
And then just to go off that, I think with the board strategic plan, I think things are sort of intentionally left a little vague. And that is to give you the flexibility of, like, what does the timing look like? What do we want to work on specifically? Just so it's not like, I don't think the board wants to assume that you guys can or cannot get something done in a certain amount of time. So it's intentionally left a little more vague. So obviously we don't want it to be going on for years and years, but we do have flexibility with that time.
So it sounds like one of the most important things we have to identify is what is our deliverable. Depending on the size of the deliverable, that dictates the date that we anticipate getting it done by. I agree with you both strongly that instead of saying, all right, we're going to go flood and you'll look at every single system that's out there all at once, you got criminal justice diversion, you got medical world, we're going to focus on one, focus all of our attention on one. I think that makes a lot of sense. What are we bringing? The question then is, and I'll open this to the floor so I can bring my word count down. The question then is, what are we delivering?
Co-chairs, if I may.
Oh, I'm so sorry, Sarah.
That's okay.
Just one thing.
Sure.
I do want to emphasize that this was identified to work on decreasing returns to homelessness. So if that helps sort of narrow the scope and not just any person who is housing insecure that's getting discharged or released or whatever the case may be. So if that helps sort of hone the vision, decreasing returns to homelessness was the thing that they were trying to accomplish with this.
Yeah, thanks for putting that back out there.
Sarah.
Thank you. If I may, in the committee, a couple of the meetings we talked about sort of thinking of this in reverse and having the first deliverable be what is the continuum, so that we're sort of putting out what we're hoping to get back, right? Like sort of an example of the deliverable of this is the continuum of care and this is what we do. Now we want to look at how do we connect to other systems. So one thought was maybe modeling that for ourselves and then reaching out to other systems. We identified a ton of systems. And I think that's where we got in the weeds, is it was a really, like Haley said, we bit off way more than we could chew. So that was just one of the ideas the committee had, was to sort of work in reverse, as of this is what we do and this is what we would like to know about other systems and how we might intersect. It's just one idea.
Of like, so Sarah, just to clarify, were you saying that it was the deliverable was to identify who the parts of the systems are in terms of what is the continuum? Is that what that meant?
Yeah, well, thinking more of the deliverable of being a series of documents, right, that identify the systems that are contributing to how are we decreasing the return to homelessness, right? So, for example, if we created one and we wanted to really keep it simple so that it was digestible and really more kind of infographic, if you will, not too wordy, but if we could give a template of what we were looking for from other systems of care, it would kind of give us a guideline to keep us, like, exactly like you said, who are the stakeholders? In what capacity are they functioning? How are they connected? What's the funding? Sort of some of those major outline guidelines to help us with a deliverable. Am I way off, Vanessa?
No, Sarah, that's exactly right. I think that, when we talk about connecting to other systems and decreasing returns to homelessness, the key to that is connecting our participants to other systems of support, right? And so once they're done with our programs, they rely upon other systems that are more long-term, instead of returning back to our system to meet their needs. So what Sarah, exactly, we wanted to create a template of what we would want to see from those systems, because we want to provide more support to the direct service frontline workers that they can't know A to Z, right? They're really good at B and they're really good at H, but everything in between is difficult. So having a one-pager, this is how I access this system, this is how I support my member in getting connected to this system, that would be the deliverable. But yeah, and so what we talked about first, like Sarah's saying, is creating a template for the COC system to provide to other stakeholders, so that we can say, here's something for you, right? Here's what we're providing to you, so you can understand housing and homelessness services. Can we work with you to get something similar for our system?
So what I'm hearing is, like, yes, we create this document because the document is what we give to every system that we connect with. When it comes to, this is what we want you to know that you can plug into, right? But simultaneously, there is the, like, where's the opportunity to, like, if we were using the hospitality sector, for example, like talking about hotels and whatnot, right? And so we're meeting with hotels, like we have the hotel association come in and, do some work with us or whatever. Like, are we looking to have those meetings be like building sessions where we're talking about like how we collaborate to be able to figure out, like, here's the problem and this is what we're going to do with it? Or is it just like, we want you guys to create a document, we'll create a document, and now we know because we've shared additional information?
I don't think we got that far.
Go ahead, Sarah.
No, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, obviously, it's more, I think the document is the deliverable, but the conversation is really where the value is in those connections.
Mm-hmm.
And then it would also have to be something that's maintained, because, things change. But I don't want to derail too much, but absolutely, some of the key systems that we talked about were schools, because we know that family homelessness is underreported. We talked about the justice system, because we know that there's a lot that can fall in the cracks with going in and out of incarceration. So I think we should turn to the data to see, where we look at returns data, see, what that can tell us and help inform us what's the first priority of a system that we want to connect to first. But and how we do that, it may be different for each system. I don't know.
Okay, because I can see huge value in taking this in chunks, right? But we want to do it in a data informed way. So to be able to understand like where are we having those returns, and then using that as a means to create prioritization for how we will address the issues, right? Like who are we talking to and in what order? But like starting with or not necessarily, it doesn't have to be like mutually exclusive. It can be a both and conversation, but we have to go and create something that's able to be given while also being able to identify who we want to give it to. And from a data standpoint, who that is, also who that is, right? And then let's say over the course of the next 12 months, we've talked to 4 different sectors, right? And so through those 4 different sectors, then we know, okay, this is what the work of this particular committee is doing. And I think that gets us closer to where we want to be.
I'll pick up on the the data piece of this, because that, to your point, should absolutely guide what we do. And I'm trying to figure out like what data exactly we're looking for, because we're talking about people who were homeless, then were not homeless anymore, and then returned to homelessness. So returns to homelessness, right? So then, and we're talking other systems of care, right? So I know people are returning to homelessness from permanent supportive housing, from rapid rehousing, but from other systems of care. So it's those two things together that is the data trail that we need to follow. Where from those other systems of care are people returning to homelessness? Not like first time, right? Are they returning to homelessness from those other systems of care? And now from a data standpoint, do we have any data interaction with those other systems of care to track that? There's nothing. Like, what do we have that could touch that? Does Mag know? Does anyone know? Looking at you, right at you guys. Katie, please.
I think there are a lot of efforts in this space to figure out where that other data is. So the Dwell is the data warehouse that is, I'm like previously LAP, if you are more familiar with the term, is in the process of figuring out like how can we combine those different data sets. I think the challenge that is looking to be more addressed, and I don't want to get us like too in the weeds in this meeting, is so like going back to the example of like education or hospitals, is folks then are no longer checking in with their permanent supportive housing. We don't know that. And so if we had that connection to a hospital, knowing that they were in hospital, then maybe we can further work with them on those types of things. So similarly, if we have a better connection with the jail system, it is an exit to jail. Is that short term? Is that longer term? Can somebody stay in their PSH or rapid? Is this a one time they were in for a night, or is this like we truly do need to exit, but then what would a reconnection look like afterwards, rather than exiting? Like using the jail example further, they say maybe they're going to prison for a year. Is there a like seamless handoff so that they don't go right into back into place not meant for human habitation versus a shelter, and like they are probably losing their like chronic status of why they were in the PSH, but is there a more seamless connection between these two systems? So I think you are right, but a lot of these are, how do we keep them from exiting a rapid and PSH and entering back into the system? Because we have these connections and this better interconnectedness. I think the hope is that the reason this was initially started was because of the returns to homelessness. However, I also think that there will be a both and benefit to the system if you have these connections with these other systems.
Yeah, it changes the question, right? If we're focused specifically on returns, it it's a different conversation as opposed to connecting to other systems of care that we know that people fall out of or like they contribute to, whether it's first time homelessness or like places where our folks are in the population, but they are not connected to services. So like it's capturing that to me that I think is what is most useful, right? Because if we're talking about returning to homelessness, education's not in that conversation necessarily, right?
It's very limited.
Yeah, but education is huge when we're talking about this conversation around how it impacts our population, right? When we're talking about the hospitals, how that impacts our population, and how many folks don't have to fall into homelessness because if they just knew who they could get connected to, right? So I think those are really key things that we have to look at. And so like asking ourselves, is the North Star for this from as far as the data point is concerned, returns, or is the North Star other systems of care?
So, yes, thank you. That is, the name is not great. I will not lie. Not only is it super long, it is misleading. Our focus is on decreasing returns to homelessness. That's what it falls under in the board strategic plan. And since the committee elected not to make any changes to that, that's what we're going to continue on. I think if we build this framework from decreasing returns, next time the board strategic plan comes around, we could absolutely expand into reaching people to prevent homelessness, more like a diversion situation, or identifying, there's a lot of things that we can do. But since we've already gone through that board strategic plan process, this is what we're locked into, at least until we get to our next planning time. So we do want to focus on the decreasing returns to homelessness. I will say, this may be a very spicy take. I know that data obviously is really important, but I don't think we should let that prevent us from choosing something today and starting the work. Because I do think that we will get to all of it. And I just don't want to give us any barriers to prevent us from like getting any work done. So definitely something that we can bring in, but I still think that we should at least identify one system to start to tackle right now.
If we don't, we don't have all the quantitative data to guide us, right in this moment, but we do have a lot of qualitative data in the room from providers. I know in the past, UMOM has looked at, and sorry to put you on the spot, Nicole, but has looked at returns to homelessness and why, reviewing why are these group of people coming back, and what happened, what did we do or what not do, or what could we improve this time around to resolve their homelessness long term. So I'll call out all the providers in the room. What have you seen in returns to your own programs, and what kind of stands out to you of a system that what maybe equipped with more information could have helped prevent their return?
I'll take one on that. I'll do that one a little bit. We have people who try to think if it's return. So yeah, they return to homelessness. In our case, a lot of times in return specifically, when they really just fall out of, it's usually addiction actually in our case. So for us, it's they're in housing, then they disconnect from their support system, and then they're into homelessness. And then they interact with a system that doesn't help it. So from at that point, so now they're back in homelessness, and they're active in addiction. And then we engage with them again and put them in detox. Then we do everything that we can to get an ROI in place with the detox facility. We do that. We say, please call us. The insurance runs out, bedtime's up, and they're on the streets. And we weren't able to get them back into treatment. So they returned to homelessness because they isolated. That's a very common thing. And any other things, they lost their job and isolated. And then when they got there, it was really hard to get them back on the right path. So I don't know if that fits exactly, but in the broader context of thinking about connecting to other systems of care, I was thinking, how do we keep people from falling out of detox and other crisis placements like that? It's a little stickier though when I put that returns header over it.
Right.
Yeah, it's a little tougher.
This is Nicole from UMOM. Obviously, we're taking the perspective more from families, and what we're seeing, definitely an increase in domestic violence. So a lot of returns related to the kind of relationship instability and the fleeing that comes with that. And then also, and this, it's not directly tied to domestic violence, but more the relationship instability when there's two incomes and that household breaks up. So it goes from two incomes to one income. Those are some of the big ones we're seeing. And then the third is clients who are just being priced out of their units. So they're not necessarily receiving evictions, but their lease is being renewed at a rate that they can no longer afford, and they're not able to find housing fast enough to avoid staying out of the system.
Michelle with a new leaf. So Nicole said exactly what I was going to say. That last point is, especially recently in the last year, our returns have been people not able to afford that unit once especially the rapid rehousing program ends. And then they come up for lease renewal and the rents have increased even more. So that's what we're primarily seeing.
Christina, I see your hand.
Thank you. Christina Lopez, Native American Connections. I just kind of wanted to piggyback Nathan, actually. In PSH, when we have to let a resident go from our program, the biggest barriers that we have are mental health and substance use. Usually we will try to offer, rehabilitation or intensive outpatient, or make that connection with crisis or a petition if possible. However, to make it not so sticky, but to just blatantly say housing first, the housing first model makes things a little bit difficult when we opt for, no services are required, but in a state where it's permanent supportive housing for a reason, those individuals need that intensive services. So we're seeing the returns to homelessness in our program because of the housing first model, unfortunately, because it's not required that you stay sober in your housing. It's not required that you stay connected to your clinic. It's not required that you have a community support partner of some kind. Those are opted for, not required. So, when their housing or their eviction comes up, we always try to offer that as something that can resolve the issue, but because it's not required, you see those individuals kind of return to homelessness, and then their chronicity is gone. And then the thing that they need the most isn't available to them for 5 or 10 more years again.
Yeah, that's a great point. Sarah, you have your hand up. Is that a new hand?
It is. Thank you. The other thing I wanted to say within our system is, and I've said this so many times, you guys are tired of hearing it, but the families that never make it into the HMIS data system, it's the unaccounted data. I have families that, for all of the reasons that Nicole and Michelle mentioned, are housed. They're tripled or quadrupled up with someone. There's a dispute of some kind. There's a family issue. There's a crisis mental situation, and now that housing is unstable. And so they come to the school seeking somewhere to go. They've been through coordinated entry years ago. They're not willing to go back. And so they double up somewhere else. And it always comes back to that affordability of they don't see themselves as homeless, and neither does a lot of the general population. And so making that connection that these folks have unstable housing and have for a very long time. They meet the educational definitions. We're servicing them at school, but they're not accessing coordinated entry.
Another similar one is, I just know a preliminary finding from a data analytics group. I want to really say preliminary, but there has been a public presentation. And one of the things that was pointed out in that presentation is that when people go to stay with friends, they tend to fall back into homelessness at a pretty high rate. And so that I hear kind of maybe interacting in some of these sort of situations as well. That yes, that's one of the areas where I don't know what that means again from other systems of care, but from a returns to homelessness standpoint, that we have to be, that I know is a problem area.
So I just want to sort of step back. What I'm hearing is one of the problems, I'm thinking of your first example, is like, especially with the isolation piece, and they just stop reaching out to their providers. Is there a way to identify some sort of like their personal support system that if you stop hearing from your client or participant or however you define them, you can reach out to their like natural support and be like, hey, we haven't heard from XYZ in a while. Do you know what's going on? Can you get us in contact? Whatever. So like maybe instead of thinking like systems of care in like maybe the traditional sense and what we think about it, it's like their personal system of care. So it's like that may be a friend or a family member or a church group or whatever. So that's also maybe a different way to think about it. Don't know if that's helpful.
No, it absolutely does. It forces you to think of natural supports. And because I think group by group or agency by agency, we may not all be so focused on natural supports as a place to connect with to ensure that people don't fall out of their housing and then just have no one else to connect with. So that it's definitely good to have that nuance on the table, I think.
Okay, so that we are steering the ship to go somewhere and to land. My question is this: what is the system that we want to address? And then is the goal of this work group to then say, okay, so let's say if we're going to talk about A, B, C, and D. So for the next 3 months, we're going to focus on A, and we're going to problem solve and work around A for the next 3 months, right? And then we'll come back. Like as we're progressing that conversation, each month they can update us on it, but this is A, right? And so then if that's the case, then like in that meeting, we'd ruminate like we are right now, but with a solutions focus, and then like determine, like, I guess the question on the table is what is A, so that we actually know where they're going. Like what's the first group that we want to be able to work through.
That was my question too. From the standpoint that I've heard of like 6 different areas: hospitals, healthcare, justice system, schools, education, service providers, and housing. Did the committee group, the universe of organizations or systems out there into that grouping or some other grouping to help us prioritize or figure out who's?
One of the things I think I heard though is that it might be more valuable. Katie made me think of this. It might be more valuable to connect with the provider community among the groups that you just listed, Jim, the service provider group that you just listed, because it's their experience of people going to the system of care and then falling out where we're going to find value. So if you go to the hospital, they may not have anything to say. But if about their people who are experiencing homelessness that return to homelessness. But the folks from PSH could help us identify where people are falling into homelessness from and why. And so I think a target stakeholder group is the service provider community to identify more information around the interaction with other systems of care. So as a concrete thing, I would propose stakeholder group to find qualitative information from service providers, particularly, I would say, because of the high rate and volume of returns to homelessness from PSH, shout out Data Analytics Work Group, that would be So PSH providers specifically would be a target.
This is Emily with Maricopa County. Yeah, I was just gonna say, we do get our hospital discharge data. So that's another opportunity where you guys can partner with. We get, I guess from the public health standpoint, they usually look at our hospital discharge data all from like a clinical standpoint. But it does, and our health equity team is kind of working towards figuring out, because it does say like if you're homeless or like those types of things, and it does say the reason or like how you got discharged. So that's another kind of opportunity. I know our data can be like de-identified. So like if you guys want to match it then with your system, that's just another good opportunity. But I would agree with kind of what you were saying, that when it comes to hospital partners, and like we do have a lot of hospital partners too, so that's kind of another kind of bridge if you guys need kind of that in. But it's kind of goes back to the whole, like they don't really, their system is just so different. And so like kind of, I mean, it's a low hanging fruit in order to get the data, but in terms of like making a bigger impact first, I would say definitely go with, you know, the service providers, just because the hospital system is very different in terms of like how they discharge, and kind of, they don't really look for that. They're kind of just like, okay, well, we did our care, we're done. And that's kind of the feedback that we've gotten to from talking with them. But so at least like if we do focus on the service providers first, our team can definitely like kind of look in on that back end of like what we're seeing in our hospital data, and then we can focus on that kind of later on.
Yeah, I want to echo that. I think that the hospital conversation is a completely different conversation in terms of like how they're bad of some hospital systems that may be not the best partners for us in regards to, look me using my diplomatic skills, in regards to how they fuel what we see on a daily basis. So I would like to echo my co-chair in regards to if we were to go down the road of PSH, particularly. I think that's a very specific group of folks that when we're talking about connecting to other systems of care, understanding what's happening, understanding who's falling out, understanding what it is that they're seeing that's not showing up in the data, and how we can then work that through to better support those that are currently in the PSH system.
Vanessa with ABC. I think that's a great plan, but I think we need, I just want to encourage, sorry, choosing my words carefully. I just want to encourage committee members who are looking for an opportunity to engage in this work a little bit more. I know that there's a lot of committee members who are in multiple work groups and committees and leading those committees. And I just want to take away the intimidation of leading a work group is not, you don't have to be intimidated. It's really easy because you have people around you, you have the great MAG staff to guide you. And so I just would encourage a leader to step up for this work group, because it's definitely needed, and to rally, get all the PSH providers there. I will be there, and to give that feedback and lead this group. So just want to put that out there.
Let me ask actually a question. So, hey, let me make a point. The agenda tells me I'm supposed to be moved on at 10:50, but we shrunk the agenda and put a bunch of things on the consent agenda so that we could have time to discuss the things that actually matter in this committee. So if you're okay with it, I'm going to keep us going because I think we have plenty of time to do the stuff that's left. Yeah, it's super quick. All right, you good with that? Okay. Because one of the things I'm wondering is, are we still going to have a separate work group, or is the work going to be done here in this group? That's kind of one of the questions that I think dictates how we answer your question, Vanessa.
Okay, so ultimately, this is your guys' time, your meeting. You can do it however you want. I will say my personal apprehension with just bringing it to the larger group is if you want to dive into things that are more specific, having that like full hour in another setting can be really useful. That doesn't preclude us from having that work done here. I just don't know that it's always the best use of our time, especially as we get further into things like NOFO that takes a lot of time on our agenda. So that is just something to think about. I will say other committees have moved to they're meeting twice a month, and they have one meeting that's like business, so stuff like this, and then one meeting that's like a purely working meeting. And so it's less, I don't want to say less formal, but it's not like this agenda that we have. So we won't have to talk about like have a consent agenda every 2 weeks or anything like that. So if that is something you guys are interested in, I know it's more time, it's a whole nother meeting. But if that helps to get everybody together in the room so you can all work on it together, definitely open to that. So like I said, it's up to you guys. I would just, with all the other stuff that happens in this meeting, I would just caution against adding this into your regular monthly meeting.
If no one else wants to do it and the meeting time was at the same time that it was before, which worked, I worked my schedule up so that it could work, then I would take a leadership role in guiding things. But I certainly don't feel like I'll only do it if no one else wants to, basically.
But they're going to jump on that. They're going to jump on that, Nathan.
But it's super important. I won't let it die. If something will happen. So if no one else will, I'll drive it. Happily.
You'll drive it during this meeting?
No,
Or you'll drive it separately?
Because it's absolutely going to need separate time. Like we're going to have real stuff to talk through.
Yes.
Like real things that we're bringing back to the table that we need to plan around, and discussion should keep moving forward. And we'll eat this meeting up. So it should be a separate one.
Okay.
Yeah. So I
will say we can definitely have an update on the work group at every
Sure.
official meeting. So then if there's anything that people have questions on, we can answer those at that time. We just wouldn't be doing like the meat and potatoes of the meeting at this meeting. Also, it's helpful if we decide to bring in any external partners who don't sit on the committee. Just logistically, it makes it a little bit easier if we have a separate work group.
Yeah. Okay. So separate work. Separate work group, same meeting time. So we'll keep all that the same. We'll get together, and I think maybe we can just work to refine from where we're at right now, which is stakeholder group to target is PSH providers, asking them questions. So we need to determine what that means around their returns to homelessness and why, and what could be better from their perspective. Bring all that in. And so then I think hopefully we have a good plan to report back to the committee on our next committee meeting after the next work group meeting, which would be a couple of Wednesdays from now, I think, right?
Believe it would be the 3rd, May 3rd.
Okay, great.
Sorry, just one more thing, Vanessa from ABC. I just want to remind all the committee members that these work groups, you can invite staff that you think might be looking for some opportunity to inform a lot of this exciting work. They don't have to be, in a certain position or even on the committee. So I would just encourage, if you have someone in your organization that's looking for more opportunities to share their knowledge and their passion, and it really, they're the experts if they're frontline workers, right? So I would just encourage everyone to invite some more people from their organizations to help, because I think this is going to take some outside work, creating documents, things like that. So I think all hands on deck would be nice.
Okay. Are there any other comments, any other questions? We do have a little time, but I'll keep us moving if there's nothing else. Okay, great. We have a plan. Great. So let's move on to the next agenda item.
It's my turn. Okay, so request for future agenda items. Anything of interest to committee members that they'd like to have us take into consideration for future meetings? So I'm gonna say it here because I want to commit. I want to hold myself accountable to it. to create like the data walk exercise and what that's going to look like for either a future meeting or just period. It doesn't have to necessarily be during our meeting that we do that because we can call for Lottie Dottie and everybody to be present beyond just the space. So, but I want to just make sure that I put that seed in the ground. Are there any other things when it comes to discussion for future meetings? Okay, hearing none. The last thing, comments from the committee. Is there anyone on the committee that has any other announcements or events that they would like to highlight? Okay, I don't have the number today, so I'm not going to give the number. I'll shoot it out to you though. Like if you ask, like if you want to know the number, granted, I will tell you the number next month, but if you want to know the number, I'll shoot it out to you. But does MAG staff have any announcements?
Just one. The Housing Coalition is putting on their stand down event in Maricopa County. That is just in a couple weeks. I know they've been working very diligently to roll that out. So if you are interested in attending or being having a table there, definitely reach out to George Campbell. They also have it on their website where you can just, it's like an online application. You can just fill it out. But definitely, I think I'm going to go at least check everything out. So would encourage everybody to see what's going on. And if anybody isn't familiar with stand downs, it's for veterans. Thank you.
Thank you. Anything else? If not, then we adjourn. Okay. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.